Hello, friends. Sorry I went AWOL again, but I had a baby. But I'd like to go ahead and finish the series that I started before the baby showed up about the vaccines that I got while I was pregnant. And I'd like to talk about the COVID vaccine, both because it is critical in pregnancy and because it looks like we're at the start of another COVID wave and everybody should get it, not just pregnant people. But let's specifically talk about why it's critically important to get during pregnancy. Now, COVID infections aren't good for anybody at any age, but they are especially dangerous for pregnant people and their fetuses. Because the thing you have to remember about COVID is that while it looks like a respiratory illness, it is in fact a neurotropic vascular illness. And the vascular part of that is what's most critical for pregnancy. Because the pregnant person is the one providing all of the blood, as well as oxygen and nutrients, to the baby via the placenta. Which is why a healthy placenta looks like this, nice and bright and red and vascular. But even asymptomatic COVID infections can make your placenta look like this, gray and not vascular. And when this happens, you are literally cutting off the oxygen and nutrient and blood supply to your baby, which is why, unsurprisingly, study after study after study after study have all shown that there are consequences to having maternal COVID infections. Consequences come in the result of neurological developmental delays for the babies after they're born, including in emotional cognition, fine motor skills, delays in language attainment. So when I see headlines like this, I'm not terribly surprised. These kids weren't even born when the shutdown happened, so no, the shutdown didn't cause this. Repeated COVID infections did. Infection during the first trimester had the worst consequences, likely because that's when we do the vast majority of our brain growth. It's also when you see things like neural tube disorders showing up. But prenatal COVID infections were significantly more risky for boys than girls, associated with things like low birth weight, higher rates of preterm birth, and higher rates of stillbirth. They're also associated with higher speech and language disorders, developmental and motor function disorders, autism, and psychological development disorders. This study, which looked at pre-vaccine infections, followed babies for up to a year after their infection in utero, and found that the risks persisted for up to a year. So the bottom line is that COVID infections, asymptomatic or not, are not good for mother or child, which is why I got a COVID vaccine at the beginning of the season when the new vaccines came out, when I was still at the beginning of my second trimester. And then I got another one during my third trimester because passing antibodies to your baby is at its highest point between the 27th and 35th week of pregnancy. Also because most of us don't make it to 40 weeks. Since babies can't get vaccinated until they're 6 months old, that's the best way that you can pass antibodies on to them to protect them for that 6-month period when they cannot get a vaccine of their own. And that matters a lot right now because we are in the beginning of a new wave, same as we are most late Februaries to early Marches. Once spring break comes along and kicks it into high gear, it's going to be game on. Now, not all of the country is experiencing the same wave. Places that don't keep getting hit by snowstorms obviously are way ahead of the game. California's had relatively mild weather this winter and has been mostly spared. But 1 in 74 means that a crowded bus, full classroom, or a full grocery store is all it will take for you to get exposed. So even if you are not contemplating having a baby right now, I would strongly encourage you to ask yourself, when was the last time I had a COVID vaccine? And if it was more than 6 months ago, it might be time for another one. Because we know that, like the flu shot, the antibodies for the COVID vaccine wane after 4 to 6 months. And the best way to protect yourself is to stay up to date on your vaccines and to mask when you're in indoor places. And if you're the parent of a very small child, try to keep them out of shared indoor air as much as possible. COVID vaccines are safe. They're one of the tools that we have to protect ourselves, so use it.